Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is probably now my favorite DLC expansion of all time, and while it has some missteps, the overall package is one of the most content-rich, beautifully made, and enjoyable experiences that I have ever had. Your Tarnished will venture into the realm of Shadow. Of course, you must first defeat Star-Scourged Radahn and Mohg, the Lord of Blood, during the game's main campaign. Following the trail of the eternally young Miquella the Kind, you will encounter new allies, enormous numbers of new foes, and gain knowledge on the lore George R.R. Martin put together in ways I never hoped possible. So tuck in for the spoiler-light Xbox-era review of Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. To enter this DLC, you'll want to be at least level 150 in the base game, or 200 if you're in New Game Plus 1. While enemies here aren't quite as high as, say, the Erdtree or true endgame level, they are buffed beyond that due to a new leveling system that works only within this realm of Shadow. The Erdtree is like the Yang to the Erdtree's Yin, with its enemies being superpowered, and you'll need Erdtree fragments to bolster yourself and the revered spirit ashes to strengthen your mount and your summons, if you so choose to use them, and you should, because if you don't, you're most likely gonna get your shit pushed in. You are, as stated previously, on the trail of Miquella the Kind, who seeks to ascend to godhood in a long-term plan hatched with his twin Melania. Along the way, you'll meet those in Miquella's thrall, as this god of love has ensnared their hearts with his false touch. If all of that was complete gibberish to you, then this expansion is not aimed at you yet. Elden Ring is a massive game, with some playing for 1,000 hours and still finding new places, bosses, and items. I finished Shadow of the Erdtree in about 25 hours, though I know many of whom have hit 40 or even more before rolling credits on the main quest. This expansion cannot be accessed until you've defeated a really tough endgame boss, which most will never have even found without using a guide, and it is all from software through and through. The realm of Shadow is enormous, featuring verticality in pretty much every zone that takes a very large map and makes it mind-bogglingly so for an expansion. As always, do my best to keep things as spoiler-light as possible, so I'll state that the main quest is actually really straightforward in how to complete it, but you will miss so much and have far more difficulty in doing so if you attempt to mainline it. Difficulty has been a really hot topic issue around this launch, and while I had my problems with the final boss, I think on the whole the expansion was really tough but fair, because the main mechanic you need to interact with is that Shadow Realm buff system. If you do not get your personal and summon blessings up as often as possible, this expansion will feel overly difficult. Also, if you're not in endgame build, you won't just simply not be prepared for the incoming damage and outgoing requirements on most fights. There are a lot of side quests, one true main quest and two almost main quests that greatly enhance the main one. There's another point of no return for many of these quests, so make sure before you go setting any fires that you focus on them, because trust me, it will be worth it for you in the end. Shadow of the Erdtree keeps up From Software's love of mixing easy-to-follow golden paths and obtuse, obfuscated optional areas. Few games are as rewarding as Elden Ring was when it comes to exploration, and Shadow of the Erdtree mostly hits the same notes, though with a few areas that feel a little barren in comparison, as I could find almost nothing to actually do in most of them. They are few and far between, and it did occasionally happen in the base game, but not to the extent percentage-wise, or at least as far as my shoddy memory goes. Finding Erdtree fragments and revered spirit ashes are but two of the reasons to explore. Shadow of the Erdtree is a constant barrage of new armor, weaponry, items, and spells in the most satisfying of ways. Unlike Borderlands 3, I never felt overwhelmed by choice when it came to my main gear. The game does probably still have way too many consumables and use items, and I ended up ignoring most of it, as the controls to use them are still pretty frustrating on a controller. When it comes to build choices, the expansion gives dozens of viable new setups until the final boss. I wouldn't be shocked if that fight is tweaked a bit in the coming weeks. My favorite weapon was a boss's spear that mixed fast, close-range hits using its art, a strong shield poker with its main, and a ranged firebomb with its right trigger. I ended up sorting and poking a lot while swapping to a pair of beautiful fire and magic swords that another boss dropped. The only limit to my imagination on how to clear all but one fight in this expansion was either a lack of runes or smithing stones. Thankfully, the game helps you here by having nearly enemy in the game seemingly have a chance to drop all but the top level ancient dragon smithing stones. If you know Elden Ring's combat and have an endgame ready build, then know that as long as you do scour the map for the Shadow Realm buffs, then you are in for incredibly difficult but fair combat. There are new types like straight up martial arts, like which most things were great for all of the expansion content except for that damned final boss. While From Software might not be the most technologically focused developer, there are multiple times in the expansion where even the most powerful of PCs seem to have framerate struggles. I played entirely on Series X for this, in performance mode, and it was mostly stable. A few times things did dip down in the heaviest of combat, but my god, is this game gorgeous. While the texture work can be rough close up, the art style and lighting are sublime. Shadow of the Erdtree features some of the most beautiful vistas you will ever see in any form of media. I don't think I can overstate how good-looking areas in this title can be. And the diversity in locales is wild, with each having its own major color and lighting palettes. The animation movesets on both new enemies and your own weaponry are some of the best the studio has done as well. This, once again, is matched by a gorgeous soundtrack that riffs off of and evolves the game's main themes. This is an expansion and not a sequel, so I didn't expect anything radically different. You'll get lots of huge, sweeping orchestral tracks with the occasional chanting-style singing that helps the new areas and boss encounters feel suitably epic. The voice acting features a few performances that go so crazily over the top that I couldn't help but fall in love with its ridiculousness. A crazed old dragon hunter yelling like he was narrating Moby Dick, losing his mind the entire time I was talking to him, and then summoning him in for the fight only for him to lose his shit even more, was so entertaining that I went and found others reacting to it on live streams. Across the board, it's the typically excellent From Software mix of weird writing and stoic, high-level voice acting. Bug-wise, the expansion was solid for me with 0 online disconnects and no major bugs that I actually ran into. That has been typical for them as of late, and it is always greatly appreciated. This is a late review, as expansions can be a bit of a pain for publishers and PR companies to set up. Xbox requires your hardware to be specifically whitelisted to gain access to new builds early, and I imagine after setting that up dozens of times, they may have grown a wee bit tired of doing any more. But still, thanks to Bandai Namco and their PR team for supplying a review code once the DLC had launched. Wrapping things up, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is my favorite expansion ever, supplanting the twins of The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine and Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, both from CD Projekt Red. There's more to do here than most games 2 or 3 times over. Outside of an overtuned final boss, I have 0 gripes and dozens of things I adore. It's not easy, it's not meant to be, but it is amazing.